So we come now to a different kind of belief. Colette Baron-Reid was first introduced to me by Suzanne Boyd, who's my colleague and is the editor-in-chief of our new magazine, Zoomer Magazine. And those of you who know Suzanne know that she is a tough-minded journalist, an inquisitive person with a very keen nose for the scandalous and for the scam. So that she thought highly of Colette kind of enhanced Colette's credibility for me. And a couple of weeks ago, I witnessed as Colette addressed a crowd about double this size of people who came also clearly with a high level of belief in her ability to intuit important and personal information about their life, which might also help them navigate through various problems. She also seemed to function as a medium between the living and the dead. All in all, it was quite unusual and quite impressive. This is Colette Baron-Reid.
Thank you. And now for something incredibly different. You know, I was sitting there and I was getting really, really nervous because I don't share the same beliefs as everyone up here, but I share, so when I say that, I'm going to say I share the same fundamental belief in a higher power, and I believe in the fact that every single human being has a purpose on this planet. But I don't have the same religious beliefs, and I think it's important for me to tell you a little bit about why I'm up here and what I believe in and my spiritual journey, because I do believe we all have a story, and I'm hoping some of you will identify with this. I, too, was imprinted upon by my parents, and my first experience of that, though, was very unique because it came in a dream. I'm from Toronto, by the way, so this is particularly amazing that I'm standing here in Toronto doing this. I live in Sedona, Arizona now. But anyway, back to my dream. I dreamt a recurring dream between the ages of 3 and 5, and it really relates to my spirituality because it was something that imprinted in me a very frightening image. And I dreamt of a very, very skeletal-looking man being shoved into an oven. Fire everywhere. And then I saw the same man in the same dream sitting at a table with gold and teeth. And I was 3 and I had lost some teeth at that time, so I knew what they looked like. And there was all these little gold things and there was a table. And then I saw similar men and then I smelled something horrible. And I would wake up from that dream and I would call to my mother. And normally when I had a nightmare, my mom would pick me up and hold me and take me to bed with her. And she didn't in this particular dream when I would describe it to her. Now, fast forward a little bit. I was raised here in Toronto in an Anglican church, and I loved church. Oh my God, I would go and see, and the big light around the saints and the stained glass windows. I thought it was so great, and I loved singing, so I got to be in the choir. And I just thought the whole talk of God and invisible people and some guy upstairs that was going to give me presents and things if I was good was really a really great story. And I loved to go. I loved it. I just loved the whole thing. So then I kept having those dreams. Now, 20 years later, I found out that I was actually Jewish. And the dreams were my grandfather, who was killed in a concentration camp in Dachau. And so my mom told me how she had been afraid. And so we were raised Christians because it was dangerous to be Jews. So I had a really conflicted feeling about religion, but I wanted God my whole life. I wanted to know that there was a God or that there was a power greater than me. I believed in that. And I also had another experience when I was a little kid, again, around religion. So I wanted to bring up religion for me in my personal story because religion and spirituality have nothing to do with each other for me, even though I'm a highly spiritual person. And I believe that all human beings are spiritual regardless of their beliefs or their ideologies, and that we are all unified in our spirituality. And that's my belief. But it took a long time to get there because what I was taught was that beliefs can actually kill you and that you could be destroyed by them. I went to a Catholic school. I went to Havergal College, by the way. I don't know if anybody here is from Toronto. Private girls' school. Look how I turned out, talking to dead people for a living, huh? I went to law school too, oh my God. I mean, my poor parents. They thought I was crazy. Now I make a living being crazy. So the whole point about the spirituality piece when I was a kid, too. I went to Loretta Abbey, and I was the vice president of the class, and I went to, the little president got sick, and so it was the job of the vice president of the class to lead the prayers. And I loved prayers. Same thing. I love talking to God. You know, hey, how are you? This is great. I love it. Thanks. Hey. So I went up to the front of the room, and I memorized all the prayers. And the nuns grabbed me physically and dragged me to sit down and said, "You can't lead the prayers. You're not Catholic." So I'm like, "Don't we share the same Jesus? Hello." Right? But because I wasn't Christian enough, I couldn't participate in that. So my yearning and longing and desire for this connection was not, I didn't have the opportunity to be raised in such a great family where everything was exactly secure, etc. So my concept of spirituality and God had to come somewhere else. It had to for me. It didn't come from there. Now, I was very fortunate. My father was an intellectual man who raised us learning all about Aristotle and Plato, and he had a huge library of myths and legends and all about different spiritual traditions. So I'm kind of like today I think I would call myself a pagan Buddhist smushed up with some animism and, and a little Christianity, because I do like Christ consciousness, but the rest of it, no. So for me, I came to this place where I had to find that, and yet I couldn't. I still couldn't. And why couldn't I? Because I had something else going on for me. And I had experiences where I connected too much to people, and I didn't know why I knew things about them since I was a kid. And that disturbed me, and I couldn't share it with people because it was weird. and I would tell a little girl in the lunchroom something that I thought she just said to me, and she'd say, "Why did you say that?" And I'm going, "Didn't you just say that?" And she goes, "No, I was thinking it." So it was very disturbing for me growing up with this psychic ability that I had to spontaneously know things about people, and that made me feel more and more confused. So I had to find a place for me. Where did that relate to spirituality? What about me? And yet again, it was something, don't tell anyone, even though my father had a tradition, and he came from an understanding of psychic phenomena and spiritualism and all those types of things that I later on understood. So I reacted by taking drugs and drinking. So my path to spirituality came through a lot of pain. 19, I was gang raped, and I really believe that moment was when my spiritual journey really began, because I left my body and I hung up in the corner of a room, and so all those psychic gifts, etc., culminated. This intuitive gift of being able to see people from a different perspective happened to me in that moment, in that horrific set of circumstances where I was up there and they were down there. And I remember distinctly knowing the suffering that these men had gone throughout their life to have brought them to a place where they could actually do something that they were doing. And now I'd love to be able to say to you that I just forgave everything and became a saint, and everything after that was just fine and dandy and great, and I became spiritual, and that's not what happened at all. I carried on with my life after that, a victim. So I had the Holocaust survivor victim consciousness. I had the absolute victim consciousness. My mother then shared with me she was raped by Russian soldiers the same month and year that I was at the same age when I was in the hospital. So I had all this victim consciousness, and then I thought God didn't love me at all, and there was no God, and that it was just a lie. And then at age of 27, I won't bore you with all the details in between, I got clean and sober, and I had my first spiritual experience, and it was with a tree. And I was in the Jean Tweed Treatment Center here in Toronto, and I had not slept or bathed for a week. I had been in a drug dealer's basement, and I had gone up the stairs, and I was hearing voices, and at that point I figured, well, I'm just nuts and crazy, and not knowing that there was some context that I could actually be useful in service to the rest of the world. So in that treatment center, I went for a walk, and I didn't know that I would be ever able to live with a dignity, without shame in my own skin, cared for by any God whatsoever, because I was dirty, and that's the way it was. And I remember going for a walk in my spiky heeled boots with blue hair. I must say I was quite festive. And gotta love it. And my boot got stuck in the mud. And I remember staring at a tree. It had been a week since the compulsion to drink and use drugs had been lifted. That was unheard of. And I looked at this tree and I thought, something made the tree. Who made this? There had to have been something. It wasn't just science. There was something alive. It wasn't just molecules and pieces and things, that built this tree. There was something living in the tree. And I thought, something that made that tree is keeping me clean and sober. And it was that simple how my spirituality started to begin. And then I went on a journey of forgiveness. There was no amnesty. There was no saying I'm sorry by these men. None of those things. I didn't fight. I was terrified. I couldn't go to the police. None of that stuff. I had to do that in here. In the past 22 years, I have read over 50,000 people individually. I have clients in 29 countries. I know that all human beings are alike. We want the same things. We want to be loved. We don't want to be afraid. We don't want to hurt anybody usually. Unless this is something that you do. But bottom line is people want to be happy. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. I could be beheaded in Saudi Arabia for doing what I do for a living today. But I have Saudi Arabian clients that call me, don't tell. Some of you are my clients in here, and because I have, a don't tell policy, I wouldn't tell. But the fact is that people seek me out with this unusual gift that came to me as a result of some really horrible things. And because of forgiveness, which I believe is the basis of spirituality. And that spirituality is a behavior. And that behavior is all about, the bottom line, it's love. You either have fear or you have love. And for all these people that I have read from all walks of life, this is what I've concluded. What I do as an intuitive also tells me something very, very important. In recovery and sobriety, my first 2 years, by the way, I didn't have anything to do with any of this mystical nonsense. And I really just threw myself into really trying to become the person that I believed that I could be. Dignity restored. I wanted to be a recording artist. I wanted to be a singer. So I pursued one thing I just pursued that. And in the interim, I had a job and I worked as a massage therapist. And when I put my hands on this woman's back, and I will never forget this as long as I live, because I wanted nothing to do with all of this, nothing. I wanted to be something else. Put my hands on this woman's back, and I heard a voice. And his name was Steve. And he said, tell my daughter I am sorry. And I got a picture of her being abused when she was 8 years old. Oh, I'm going to cry. And don't do this if this happens to you and you're a body worker. Don't ever just blurt this out to somebody. That's not a good idea. But anyway, I just said, you were abused when you were 8. Is this correct? And you're carrying all this tension in the bottom of your back. And is it true? And your dad was named Steve, and he really begs for your forgiveness. Well, this woman jumped off the table. Hello. And very quickly, I didn't get very many clients after that from the massage because she told all her friends. And that's actually how Suzanne came to me, to know me many years ago. And it was like, so my career as an intuitive began, and it was all about forgiveness. It's always about forgiveness. And I'm the most skeptical person on the planet. I never wanted to do this for a living. I so wanted to be a recording artist, and I even got the record deal with EMI Music Canada, and have 2 CDs out, but I was 42, and I was a little old, and I didn't want to be skinny, so whatever. And I go to bed at 9 o'clock now, okay? So I told them how old I was after I signed the papers, by the way. Oh, by the way, guess how old I am? Anyway. But that's got nothing to do with this. What it does have to do with is the fact that through my intuition, it's not what I can do. It's not that we don't die. It's that we're connected. That when I demonstrate my abilities and when this happens to me, when I put my hands on somebody's back and I know these things about them, and I know someone on the other side is dying for their forgiveness or wanting them to not act in this victim consciousness anymore, that is some kind of God. I don't believe in an old man in the sky. I don't believe in anything like that. That's my choice. I totally understand that other people do. It's just not what God is for me. God is love, and God loves through forgiveness. And we are the ones that must steward that. We have to act that. That's not something that's a concept and you can't find it in a book. You have to do it. And so when I do this, That was the other thing. I thought, well, what about the soul? Everybody talked about the soul when I was in church, and Jews have souls and Hindus don't, and I mean, everybody has opinions about who has one and who doesn't have one, right? So I just think everybody has one. But I also don't believe that the soul is contained inside the body at all. I believe that the soul is much larger than the body. I believe that we steward, that soul that never dies takes us, grows with us, evolves with us, and as we drop, that's still there. It's not that we die and then something goes poof like in Ghost, like, boom, there he goes, up there or down there. We don't live in a hamburger universe either. I don't believe in heaven up there and hell down there and somewhere in between. We're like happening or not, right? It isn't about that. I really don't believe that. I believe that there is eternity and that we have a choice. Somebody said that yesterday, one of the speakers talked about, being one, not one or the other, not being black or white, that we are a combination of a number of things. This is the 11th year that the Idea City has existed. And Moses could never have picked this number to have me come here because in spiritual numerology, the number 11 is the master intuitive. And it represents two pillars, that we live between two pillars. One, I create my own reality, which is the human will. And two, I live life on life's terms, or I live life according to the will of the divine. So somewhere in between that, we make our lives. We make our choices. I've built my reputation on predictive accuracy, so I do talk to people about their futures, but I also believe we have a choice about that future. That's just an image, that right here and now is the future, and that we are a product of our past, and that we have opportunities now more than ever to change that and to change the direction that we're in. I also believe, too, that spirit lives everywhere, not just in human beings. Spirit's in my dog. When my dog looks at me in the morning and with his smelly breath, to me, that's God, and I look at that love that goes between me and a living thing, and how I treat that living thing, and that's God to me. So spirituality, as I said, comes in something that is an action, and it isn't contained, for me, in an ideology. One of the things that I have found, too, about 6 years ago, I started touring as a medium, and I was very skeptical about this. I knew I could pick up information about it, and I thought, okay, yes, I delivered a message that somebody had want forgiveness, but I still wanted more proof. And so I started smelling people, and I started hearing voices, and then when I could deliver the message to the person in front of me in the audience, it was something that was so profound between me and them that made me feel that much more in my truth about this, that there was life after death. But you know what? Even in that, we still have to live in the now. And so when people come to me and I talk to them and I use my intuition and we live between those two pillars of that number 11, we talk about right action. What is right action today? What is ethical right action? What is morality? How do we treat each other? When is it inclusive? When is spirituality inclusive? It can't be exclusive. It can't. And forgiveness, personally, I don't think. Amnesty, for me, if we don't get amnesty, we're the ones responsible. The victims are responsible. I feel that the more I stayed a victim, the more I victimized myself. And so for me, when I work with people and in my own life, I am living proof that miracles can and do happen. And some weird things, too. Anyway, I think I just want to say thank you to Moses. This is a really unusual opportunity for me. I know that we are here together, all of us in this room, for various reasons, but I know for one thing, it doesn't matter what you believe. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you care about me, but I know that we all have a soul, we all have a spirit. The world has a spirit, and it's our responsibility to steward that, and that we all have a purpose. And that's it. Thank you. I had no idea what I was going to say.
Of course, my pal Leonard says, it doesn't matter who or what you worship, as long as you get down on your knees.
One more.
Been there.
One more. Okay, this is great. Thank you.
All right, thanks.